Well, so here we are, it's time for this week's unRAID tutorial. This week we're back looking at VMs, and in this video we're going to take our OSX VM and dive into the advanced techniques we can use to make the VM as close to a real Mac as possible. Okay guys, so this video's been a long time coming. I can't actually believe it's a month since we installed Sierra using the VMware method. Well, before we start, I'd especially like to thank Joe Spurlock over in Kansas for all his support of the channel and the request for this video. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank everyone over the last few months who have helped with the channel by their kind donations. Well, let's get started. So in the last OSX video, we got our VM set up with remote access, but now it's time to take it way beyond that. So by the end of this video, you'll know how to get a dedicated GPU, a real keyboard and mouse, and hot swappable USB support, all working in the VM. That, as well as other useful tips. So, we'll break the topic down into the following parts. How to edit an OSX VM template, identifying which hardware we can use for an OSX VM, passing through physical devices to an OSX VM, such as a real keyboard and mouse, a dedicated GPU, or a USB controller, getting an Nvidia card working using the Nvidia web drivers, getting sound working through the HDMI of your GPU, avoiding manual edits of the XML using virtmanager, and finally, looking at the problems you guys have had with installs using my previous OSX videos. Okay, so let's look at how to edit an OSX VM template. Okay, so here I've got my OSX VM running, and if I start on VNC, we can see we're in Clover, and we'll just boot up the VM, and as you can see the VM boots up fine. So now let's close it down. Now if you remember, when we originally set up our OSX VM, we used a lot of custom edits inside the XML file. If we scroll down to the bottom here, you can see some of it here. Now when we edit an XML template, we have to manually edit the XML. And the reason being is if we actually try and edit it using the template manager, say we scroll down and we wanted to add this keyboard here, and we've clicked update, what you'll notice is at the bottom all of our manual edits have now just gone. And when we try and start up the VM, it will look as though it's working. We'll boot into Clover fine. Oh, it's still saying Merry Christmas. But you'll find when we actually try and start up OSX, it will just stick on that Apple sign. There'll be no progress bar going along, and our VM is basically broken. So let's rewind that and follow the golden rule. Always back up the XML first. So just click on the VM and click Edit XML, and then click into the template, and then on a Windows machine press Ctrl and A, or on a Mac press Command and A, and then I always like to click Cut. The reason being then I can see the whole template's empty and I haven't left anything behind. And then you need to open a text editor. Now on Windows I'd recommend Sublime Text, and on Mac I'd recommend TextMate. Please don't use Notepad or TextEdit on Mac, you'll get far better results using a proper text editor. So just inside, paste your XML, and then paste it back inside the template again, and click update. And so now we have a backup of our XML, so should anything go wrong, we can just paste this back into the template. But before we go doing any edits to the XML, let's just talk about what hardware we can actually pass through to an OSX VM. So, in a Windows VM, we can add any hardware that has drivers for it, so pretty much all hardware will work in Windows. However, OSX is a different beast. We can only use hardware that's supported by OSX. As Apple are the only people to make computers running OSX, the operating only supports hardware that you'd find inside a real Mac. We must choose what we pass through carefully. Now any hardware that works for the Hackintosh community will also work for us on our OSX VM. Because really, it's not an OSX VM, it's actually a Hackintosh VM. So I recommend checking out hardware you're thinking about first at one of the Hackintosh websites, such as Tony Mac x86 or Insanely Mac. Now, not all graphics cards are supported, so be careful. I have a GTX 1070, and at present the 10 series Nvidia cards are not supported. However, a lot of the older Nvidia cards are. Nvidia have released drivers to make these cards work with OS X. They are called the Nvidia web drivers, and you'll see how to install them later. Because earlier Nvidia cards work, I bought myself an MSI GTX 750 Ti for use in my OS X VM. Of course, USB devices are different, as most USB devices work on most computers, so any keyboard and mouse would work. But for other things like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi dongles, always check they have support for OS X before you go out and buy them. Okay, so now we're getting through to the fun part. So in this video I'm going to show you how to pass through 3 devices: a keyboard and mouse, a GPU and a USB controller. Now I'm going to pass through an Nvidia GPU, so that means I'm going to have to install the Nvidia web drivers. Now it's important when using an Nvidia card that we install the web drivers before we pass through the card. In my opinion, it is best to use an Nvidia card with OS X, but if you're not using an Nvidia card, then you can just skip through to the next section. In the past I have had good results with AMD Radeon 6450, which pass through and work straight out of the box. So let's start up the VM, and then we'll go across to Splashtop Desktop for the installation of the web drivers. Now the reason we install the web drivers first is just so we can actually see the Clover configurator window in the correct resolution. So first we're going to actually make the alterations in Clover before we install the web drivers. So double click on Clover configurator, and it will then ask you if you want to mount the EFI partition, which we do. And again at the bottom here, mount EFI partition, and put in the password. And now we want to click on open partition and go into the Clover folder, and here you'll see config plist. Right click that and open with Clover configurator. Now if we go down to the second one, boot here, this is where a lot of people go wrong. In OS X versions earlier than Sierra, we used to have to tick this one here in order to load the web drivers. But in Sierra, this is no longer the case. This doesn't work. So leave this unchecked and go down to System Parameters, and at the top here you'll see Inject System ID and Nvidia Web. Select both of those and then go up to the top here, File, and then Save, and then let's exit this, click OK, and I always like to just go back in just to check that those did save correctly. So I'll go down to my system parameters, yep, those two are checked, and I'm also going to just check again that this isn't selected, so that's fine. So let's close the Clover configurator and close this, and now let's open our browser, and in the top paste the link in the description, which takes us over to the Insanely Mac forums, where we'll see a list of the various web drivers for Sierra. And as you can see, there's various builds next to all of these web drivers, so to find out your build, just click on the Apple symbol at the top and go to About This Mac, and you can see here it says version 12.12.2, so if I click on my version here, it brings up the build number. So I'm build 16C68, so I need to find this one here and just click on this web driver here. And so that started to download. Okay, so now that's downloaded, we'll go into our downloads folder and install this. So just follow the prompts through. So once it's finished, just click on to restart. But we don't want it to actually reboot, so what we'll do is, before it fully reboots, is we'll quickly go over here and force stop the VM, and that will allow us to then add in the hardware we want to add in. Okay, now we've got the web drivers installed, we can make some manual edits in our XML in order to pass through the devices we need. And the easiest way to do this is to set up a new Linux template that we can use to copy and paste XML out of. So I'm going to call this OS X VM Pass-Through Tutorial Template, and don't bother filling out anything at all except for the primary VDIS location, set that to none, scroll down to the bottom and untick Start VM after creation, and then click Create. And here you can see the template that we've just created. So at the moment there's nothing in that except VNC graphics, so let's view the XML and let's scroll down to the bottom. And here we can see the VNC graphics part here. So remember what that looks like. And so what we're going to do is we're going to now go back to the template manager for this one, and scroll down, and we're going to change the VNC, and we're going to select, for me, the GTX 750 Ti, Note that it's 0600.0, and also I'm going to select the sound part of that graphics card with the same number here but a 1 on the end. And now just click update, and now when we view the XML will have changed. So let's scroll down to the bottom, and now the graphics card will have been added in some host dev tags. So if we look at these here, the top part here, you can see where it says bus 060000. This is the graphics part of the graphics card, and down here the 060001, that's the sound part. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this part of the XML and paste it into our XML. So just click copy here and just click on cancel here, and now we're going to go to our proper OSX VM template and click edit XML and scroll down to the bottom, and remember what our VNC XML looked like. That's it here. So let's remove that, and then we're going to paste in what we just copied from the other template. And before we go pressing update, what we're going to do is we're going to remove 2 address tags out of here. For the first bit here, for the first part here, which is our graphics part of the graphics card, we're going to remove this second address tag here. This address tag is a virtual address within our VM, and the one above it here, this is the actual physical address in our server. So we want to delete the second one here, and let's do the same with the sound part. So underneath the source tags, we're going to delete this address here. Now the reason we do this is because the XML manager will put in the correct address for this template when we click update. So let's click update, and just to show you that they've gone back in, we'll view the XML, and you can see that these address tags have been put back in, but the correct virtual address for this actual template. And also what we can do, we can have a look in our template manager to see that hardware's been added. So just click edit and scroll down, and now you can see that the Nvidia GTX 750 and its sound counterpart is here. But now make sure don't press update, because then you'll ruin your edit. So we're only just checking what we've done visually here, so just click cancel. Okay, and now we'll go back to our template again, and we'll click edit. I'm going to pass through this Fresco Logic USB 3 controller. I know it's compatible with OSX out of the box, and if you haven't already passed through a USB 3 controller before, then please see my other video of how to do that, and you'll learn how to make it turn up in the other PCI devices list. So just select it, and let's just take a look at the hardware address here. It's 0200.0. So let's click update and view our XML again. So now looking at the bottom of the XML here, we can see another host dev tag here, and if we look at its source address, it has the number 02000, which we saw in the template. So let's copy this and click cancel here, and then click edit XML and scroll back down to the bottom, and under our last host dev tag, let's paste this, and again we want to remove our virtual address here underneath the source tag, and click on update, and we'll look back in our template again, and we can see that one's successfully been added. So click on cancel again, not update. And now lastly, let's pass through our keyboard. So let's scroll down, and here under the USB devices, here's my Logitech keyboard. So just select that one. Have a look here of the identifying number of this keyboard. It ends in C52B. So click update, and now click on edit XML, and let's scroll down, and we can see here that we've got another host dev tag, and it says the type is USB, and there's the number of our keyboard that we saw in the template. So let's copy that and click cancel, and then edit our XML again. Scroll down to the bottom and paste it in, and again we want to remove the address. So under the source tag here, the second source tag. Let's remove this address here. And now click update. And now we'll have a final look at our template. And now we can see we have the graphics card in, we have the keyboard in, and the USB controller. So again, cancel, not update. And we can see that we've got all of our custom edits still in the template. Now this part here, obviously I've removed my OSK key for this video, so yours will look different, it will be the proper one. So here we are booted back up into the VM, so now let's just have a look at the properties of the machine. As you can see here, the Nvidia GeForce GTX 750 Ti is perfectly recognised. Obviously the keyboard and mouse are working fine. If you look up the top here, it says the Nvidia web drivers selected. One thing to note with that is you can't actually turn it on and off, that has to be done through Clover. If we look at our displays, you can see here the resolutions that are available for my monitor. And now let's just try plugging in a USB device. Okay, and as you can see, the USB is working absolutely fine. So we've got keyboard working, we've got graphics working, and we've got USB working. Right, so now let's have a look at the sound. As you can see, there are no sound devices here. And to be honest, sound can be a to get it working. So what you're going to need this file here, which is in the description. It's an HDMI audio kext. So just open up the file and mount it to the desktop, and then you're going to need to open up Terminal. Then in Terminal just type CD and then drag the HDMI audio mounted folder in here and just press enter, and then type /install.sh and then hit enter. Now pop in your password, and the HDMI audio kext will be installed and it will rebuild the extension caches. And once it's finished, just close the window, then you can reboot the computer. Okay, so now the VM's rebooted, let's go back to the sound devices and have a look what's available. Yay, and now we've got an HDMI out device, we've got the Acer monitor showing up here. So let's test it and see if it works. We'll load up YouTube. Great, so the sound's working fine. Okay, so let's close this browser window. Okay, so the HDMI sound is working absolutely fine, but there's one thing to be aware of. This is the back of my MSI 750 Ti, and as you can see it's only got one HDMI port, but in fact it can output HDMI sound through the DVI as well. Now when I was running El Capitan, it would output the HDMI sound out of the port that you'd think it would, the HDMI. But when running Sierra, for some reason it's outputting the HDMI sound out of the DVI port. So what I've done is I've bought a DVI to HDMI converter so I can hear the sound. So if you see your HDMI audio device listed in OSX and you don't hear sound through the HDMI, it's probably being output through one of the other ports. Okay, so we've seen how to get our devices working in OSX Sierra, and we have manually edited our XML to pass through these devices. Now there is another way, which I haven't told you about yet, which you can pass through devices without having to actually manually edit the XML, and it's using a program called virtmanager, which manages KVM virtual machines. Now I've made a video about this in the past, about installing virtmanager, so please see that video for how to get it working on a Linux VM for running the program. Now there are also ways to get virtmanager working from a Mac by installing Homebrew on OSX, and in this video that's how I'm using it. Now I may make a video in the future about how to use virtmanager from OSX or Windows if enough people leave comments below this video. So in virtmanager you just select the template and click open, then click the light bulb, so we can see all the hardware that we've got in the VM. So you can see there's the Logitech receiver we passed through, and there's the 750 Ti, and there's the Fresco Logic controller. So let's just remove these out. It's as easy as just clicking on it and clicking remove, and it will take that out of the XML. And the good thing is it doesn't touch any of our custom edits. And then to add hardware is just as easy, you just click on add hardware, and then there's a list of all the different types of things you can add, and what we'd be adding is a PCI host device, so we can just scroll down through here. You can see there's my graphics cards, there's my 1070 and there's my 750 Ti, so we'll just click finish, and yes. And so the 750 Ti is added in, and let's just add one other thing. Let's look at our USB devices, and there we can just add the Logitech receiver again. And it's really as easy as that to add the devices. So yeah, it does take a bit of time to set this up, but it's well worth doing if you don't want to have to do manual edits. Okay, for the last couple of minutes of this video, I'm just going to go through some of the common problems and questions you guys have about OSX VMs. Now, the most common problem people have is not having the correct OSK key. Now here I've put this OSK key in, obviously it's wrong, and I'm going to click update, and I'll just show you what happens when this VM starts up. Everything looks fine, Clover starts working, and you just start the VM, and the Apple sign will come up and it will start to boot. But then you'll just get something like this come up on the screen, and then the machine will reboot again. Now, another common problem is people have forgotten to set their disk type as SATA, and they have it as virtIO. So let me show you what happens when you have it set as virtIO. Now again, it will boot up to Clover, but then when we start, we won't get any further than the Apple symbol. And another problem is people ask how to make the CPU type come up correctly. You can see here it says Intel Core Solo, and my processor is an Intel Xeon. And this happens if you define your CPU at the top of the XML. You can see here where it says CPU name equals custom, match equals exact, fallback allow equals penrin. But you should only define the penrin in the bottom of the XML as a QEMU arg value. Whilst in the top part of the XML you use the host pass-through method and you define the topology. And now you can see my processor is a 2.4 gig quad-core Xeon. Another problem is people who want to run a Windows VMware VM inside their OSX VM are getting an error about incompatible hypervisor. What they want is for it to be like this. Well, that's a teaser for you guys, and recently David Rains asked if this could be done. Well David, I'm sorry, this video is too long as it is, and I'm going to have to put it in another video which I'll upload tomorrow. I think my girlfriend will kill me if I spend any more time editing today. So on that note, it's the end of another video. I really hope you liked the video guys, and if you did then please hit that like button and please subscribe to the channel. And if you feel like you like what I'm doing and you want to support the channel, then please do that through the donation link in the top right hand corner. Anyway guys, whatever you're up to for the rest of the day, I hope it's good, and I'll catch you in that next video.